Hello and welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints for SEC Extra at D1Baseball.com. Here to present it, of course, by Plains Coffee. Can't forget that. Plains Coffee Company sponsoring our Saturday editions of Weekend Waypoints. As I've said the last few weeks with Plains Coffee Company, there's a bunch of good news about the company. Husband and wife team roasting coffee beans in the heart of SEC country. Doesn't get any more local small business than that. Shipping is free in the United States. Every order that you order to be shipped in the United States is free. And then if you use the code baseball at checkout at plainscoffee.com, you get 10% off your order. And finally, when you order, they roast the beans after that. So your beans have not been sitting around for God knows how long on a shelf before they get shipped to you. You order, they get roasted, they get shipped next day. They're as fresh as they can possibly be once they get to your doorstep. So go to plainscoffee.com for more information. If you're not that into coffee, they've got tea as well. So check that out. Again, plainscoffee.com. Use code baseball for 10% off your order. Okay, let's talk some ball, huh? A little bit of a light Friday, just given some of the weather stuff here. I'm coming to you live, as they would say, from Columbia, South Carolina, ahead of doubleheader today between South Carolina and Vanderbilt, and then Georgia and Alabama also, end up banging their Friday game to do a doubleheader today, Saturday. So a little bit of a light Friday, but some interesting stuff for sure. I have the scores page pulled up here we can look at together. There we go. So some interesting stuff here, and also just Tennessee taking care of Ole Miss. I didn't see that come. The idea that Tennessee was going to score a lot of runs against Ole Miss, I don't think is a surprise. That Tennessee won the game, obviously not a surprise, but just seeing them run away with it in the way that they did was impressive stuff. And I was on radio I do a weekly radio hit in Baton Rouge every week, and I was kind of asked to compare and contrast the Mississippi State weekend versus the Ole Miss weekend, in which I had a little bit more faith in. And I'm not sure I would have given this answer before the season, but at this point, I said State. And part of it was because with Ole Miss, I thought their series win over South Carolina, impressive, yes, but I'm still not exactly sure what to make of South Carolina. I'm hoping to kind of figure that out a little bit more while I'm here this weekend. Whereas with State, I'm a lot more confident in LSU figuring it out, being better. We saw that with their win Friday night against Florida, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But I thought the possibility that Ole Miss would go to Knoxville and Tennessee would just look like the far and away better team, I thought that was on the table. And at least through one day, that looks like the case. AJ Causey pitched well. They jumped on Gunnar Dennis, did Tennessee, and came away with a big win there. But so there was the night in SEC baseball. The Kentucky-Missouri game was just bizarre. Kentucky's up 3-1. Missouri ties it late in the game on back-to-back wild pitches with the bases loaded. They go to extra innings. Then Kentucky just breaks it open in the 11th and ends up scoring a bunch of runs and going up 9-3 and wins it 9-4. Just a kind of a bizarre game there. But as we've said before, an opportunity here for Kentucky that they get a sweep opening weekend. A sweep is on the table against this Missouri team, given how Missouri has played so far this season. So just a really big opportunity for the Wildcats to get out to a quick start here. Okay, let's dive into some of the deeper stuff here. Let's talk. Carl Dunn comes in. Pitcher of the night is Luke Holman of LSU. I suspect you are correct, Carl, but you'll have to wait. You'll have to wait and see. That's what we call a tease in the business. But we'll start with game of the day. Arkansas 6, Auburn 5. Talk about weird games. This one was 2. Arkansas wins it. That's 15 in a row for the Razorbacks. Also here, we got a notification before the game, several hours before the game, maybe it was even in the morning, so quite a while before that, Dave Van Horn was not going to be there. And in the initial message, it was like just a private personal issue or something, like personal matter, something like that. And it turns out he was awaiting the birth of his first grandchildren, a set of triplets. So good luck to mom and dad dealing with a brand new set of triplets around the house. That sounds exhausting. Kudos to all you folks here watching that have multiple children that you're playing defense against on a daily basis. That sounds exhausting. Triplets definitely does, but congrats to Coach Van Horn on his first grandchildren. And let that be a lesson to you, everyone. Look, this is a big SEC series. And Dave Van Horn was just like, yeah, you guys got it. I'm going to go watch my grandkid or, see my grandkids, be born. And that's, I mean, obviously that's more important. And I just feel like we should have more of that in the world. People who say, you know what, it's, it's more important that I go do this as opposed to being here for this one other game. I think it's a great example to set. So kudos to him, and his team comes out with a win. Adding to the weirdness here was late in this game, I think it was in the 8th inning, the home plate umpire gets hit with a foul ball in the mask and he immediately falls back. And so you're like, okay, he got rocked a little bit. So, they take him off the field and they have to switch home plate umpires. But I guess the home plate umpire, Alfredo Burkeen, who was going to take over behind the plate, his gear was in like a football building. I guess maybe that's where the umpires had gotten ready and whatnot. So they had to golf cart him over there and get his stuff ready and then come back. The whole thing took like half an hour. So we got a weird break right there in the middle, but the big hit here, Ryder Helfrich, 9th inning home run to put Arkansas on top. It was his first hit since February 27th, only his 3rd hit of the season. Obviously a highly touted freshman who just hasn't cracked the lineup as often as I think we thought, and certainly as Arkansas would have hoped, but a big hit there that was just a monster home run over the monster in left field there at Auburn. So impressive stuff for Arkansas to come back there to get it done in a way in which, they didn't get, a great start, which they've gotten so many this year. I mean, Brady Tiger got lifted fairly early. And yet they were able to find a way to win. They didn't score 15 runs, but again, they scratched and clawed and got a win. And I think that's impressive for Arkansas. I think that's important that they can win games when their starting pitching isn't pristine, as it so often has been this season. So I think that's really, really good news. Will McIntyre came and closed this thing out. He's been really good this year. I don't think I totally internalized how good he's been for them this year and that he's a guy in the bullpen. And Will McIntyre is a known entity, right? I mean, he's been a key bullpen guy. He's pitched in Omaha. He's been around forever and done a lot of things. And he reminds me, he's not exactly Kevin Kopps, because Kevin Kopps came out of like totally nowhere when he did what he did a few years ago. But he is similar in that he went from being a guy who, they tried him in a bunch of different roles, and he seems like kind of a role player, a guy who's nice to have as a depth piece, but probably isn't a centerpiece of your pitching staff, right? And now he's shown that, hey, maybe he is a centerpiece here. Like maybe he's a real weapon in the bullpen, and we'll see. We've got, after this weekend, we've still got 8 more SEC regular season weekends. We'll see, but so far so good with Will McIntyre. He's been really, really impressive. And then on Auburn quickly. Alsop got him through 5, but got hit a little bit again, kind of your typical Chase Alsop start where he gets through it, but he gives up some hits and some runs. He's just not that clean. Auburn now 0-5 in SEC play, and I'm not worried about Auburn from the standpoint of, oh, this team's going to bottom out or crater. I don't think that's on the table. One is just like the steadiness of this program, and 2 is the talent. But 0-5 at 0-5, it does get late early in SEC play, and because things don't necessarily get that much easier. I mean, they have had a particularly difficult road with Vanderbilt and Arkansas back to back to start the SEC season, but it's not going to get totally easier, right? I mean, there might be a couple of soft weekends, but not very many. So in order to get back in a position where they're going to host, for example, as they would like to, they're going to have to get moving. And I trust that they will at some point, but 0-5 is a little bit of a hole. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. So this finale of today's series against Arkansas is a big one for Auburn to get this game, because 0-6 obviously is really tough. And then you've got to sit all week and stew with that if you get swept again. So big game here for Auburn today that maybe you might not have thought. Okay. Yeah. Congrats to Coach Van Horn, Carl Dunn. Yep. Agreed. Scott Seal, Dogs victory in College Station. Yep. Yeah. A big victory there. We'll actually get to that in just a second, but let's do player of the day. This is where we will get to Mississippi State win over Texas A&M. Player of the day options, some guys who didn't make the cut, but who could, were considered. Christian Moore, Tennessee, 2 for 4 with 2 home runs. His teammate Kavaris Tears, 3 for 3 with a double, a home run, and 4 runs scored. Robin Villeneuve, 3 for 4 with a home run and 4 runs batted in. For Kentucky, Mitchell Daly, 2 for 4 with a double, a walk, and 3 runs batted in. When Kentucky had those 3 runs basically all game, he had driven in all 3 of them. So he was really important for the Wildcats until they, exploded for some more scoring and extra innings. And then Cooper Weiss for Auburn, reached base all 5 times, 2 for 2 with 3 walks and 3 stolen bases. And he just continues to be an extremely good catalyst for the Tigers. I mean, so there's always a question of when you have a player move up from a mid-major like Miami, Ohio, like how it's going to translate. And even if it translates well, you never expect a guy like Cooper Weiss to all of a sudden become a guy who's controlling the game, but he kind of does with the way he gets on base and the way he steals bases and makes opposing teams have to think about him. That's been really, really impressive. And he also seems to fit in with the demeanor of the team. He seems like a perfect fit for just like the vibe of the rest of the team there at Auburn. So he continues to be really, really good for the Tigers. But the player of the day is Hunter Hines for Mississippi State, 3 for 3 with 2 walks. So he reached all 5 times with a home run and 3 runs batted in Mississippi State's win over Texas A&M, 5-1. Again, the type of game that last season Mississippi State probably isn't winning. Like if you score 5 last year, if they score 5 runs against Texas A&M with the pitching struggling the way it did last year for them, they're probably not winning that game because they had a heck of a time holding teams, especially those with good offenses, to fewer than 5 runs. This time they pull it off. Cal Steven was very good. He's been up and down a little bit this season, but he was up yesterday. That was good stuff for him. So really impressed by State that they even this series. Big rubber game today. Because man, if State can win a series against LSU and Texas A&M to start this SEC season, it does really kind of make you think about, okay, we know this team is better now, period. But how much better? But if they win a series against LSU and Texas A&M, 2 top 10 teams right out of the gate, they could beat just about anybody, right? I mean, there's really no ceiling on who they could beat. Now, that doesn't mean they will. That doesn't mean they'll be consistent all season, but it shows a ceiling that just wasn't there the last 2 years. So big win there. Let me round up some of these comments here. Good morning, Larry, on YouTube. Yep, Jamie Hayes, congrats to Dave Van Horn, first-time grandpa, yep. I mentioned that at the top, Jamie. Yeah, just kudos again, Coach Van Horn, for doing the cool thing and being like, see ya, you guys got this here. I'm gonna go meet these grandkids, which is really cool. So congrats, healthy triplets. 3 new Hog fans. That is correct, Jamie. The Razorback fan base already sizable. Just got +3 yesterday. Tanner Harris on X. People are saying Ryder Helfrich's swing looks just like Mike Trout's. Not me, but some people. Yeah, good call, Tanner. Certainly the flight of that ball, and I see what you're saying, like the swing path. Yeah, and also the way the ball came off of the bat yesterday. I mean, that ball was just tattooed. And maybe that gets him going. Obviously Arkansas is kind of still looking for, hey, can we find some spark plugs offensively? Maybe there's something there. Maybe this gets him going a little bit. We'll have to see. Carl says, hope Florida series is bounce back for LSU. I think there's I think this is an opportunity for that, Carl. I think there's a recalibration for LSU. I need to see more than just 2 series, even if they do win this series. But I think there's just a recalibration of what their ceiling is. I'm not saying it's necessarily lower. I just don't know, because I kind of thought the offense would kind of show progress, and it has in some ways, but not in others. And the starts last weekend that weren't very good kind of made me reconsider some things. I'll just have to give it some time. I will see LSU next weekend. I will be in Fayetteville. Speaking of the Razorbacks and LSU, I will be in Fayetteville next weekend, Easter weekend, for that series. So really excited about that because I think it's a great test for both teams. The atmosphere will be electric for that one. Okay, let's talk pitcher of the day. I mentioned Cal Steven, 6 2/3, 5 hits, 1 run against Texas A&M. Trey Pusser for Kentucky, starting in place of Travis Smith. Travis Smith had been starting on Fridays for Kentucky. He wasn't in the rotation this time around. It's been a struggle for him. Pooster, the College of Charleston transfer, steps in, 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 run with 2 walks and 7 strikeouts. I also liked for Kentucky what Johnny Hummel did in the bullpen. Now, he was the guy who uncorked the wild pitches that scored the 2 Missouri runs to tie it 3-3 late in the game, but he inherited that bases loaded situation. And then, but on his ledger, 3 1/3 hitless innings with 6 strikeouts. He's a real weapon on the back end. A Division II Erskine College transfer who could be one of the better relievers in the SEC. He's kind of a funky guy. I mean, his stuff is good, but it's not great. It's a lot of funk, and he just buries a breaking ball. You're gonna have to lay off that curveball when he's in the game, and opposing teams have a lot of trouble doing that. So kudos to him. But the pitcher of the day, as Carl Dunn suggested, is Luke Holman. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 run. I couldn't read my own handwriting. 1 hit, 1 run, 3 walks, and 12 strikeouts. Yeah, 1 hit, 1 run. Man, my handwriting is bad. If you guys could only see my notepad here. 3 walks and 13 strikeouts for Luke Holman. He's back, I guess. Last season, and I thought that'd be the case. Last week was, I think, I don't want to say an aberration, because I do think you'll get got. I mean, unless you're Paul Skeens, right? Or maybe Hagen Smith. Like, unless you're one of those guys, like, I think you're just going to get got sometimes in SEC play. That's not a hot take. I think that's just reality. And I think that's what that was. So I don't want to say total aberration. I just think it's part of the deal. But got back on the horse this time around against a really good Florida lineup and shut them down. So great stuff there. If I'm an LSU fan, I feel really good about that, hey, this was not a mirage of non-conference play, and Luke Holman is going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight, metaphorically speaking, that he's actually going to be this guy the rest of the season. Yeah, Armstrong asked, is LSU back? I don't know if they really went anywhere, to be honest with you. I just think this team is just different. And I think they're going to lose. They're probably going to lose some series where they don't get the pitching that they need to get. But they're going to win most series when they do get the pitching that they need to get. And I think that's, if they get games like last night, they're going to win a lot of games. If they get starts like last weekend's, they're going to struggle and have to scrap and claw because the offense is just not as powerful, as physical, as productive as last year's was. I think that's just a fact at this point. And that was kind of the expectation, honestly. So I don't know if it's back necessarily, but I do think last night's win shows that the panic was not necessary, especially now that State has also State has also kind of backed up its result. I almost think as an LSU fan, you're like, okay, that actually makes me feel better if you're an LSU fan, because okay, State is not just, we didn't get run off the field necessarily by a bad team. I think State's good and they're showing that. So I think all those things combined. Armstrong mentions, 7, 8, 9 in the Florida lineup is a real drop off, says Armstrong on YouTube. And I agree, that is a thing. And it feels like a nitpick just because the core of their lineup is so good, but you're right, Armstrong. And it's something I've said the last few weeks, that they really need someone in that group of, Brody Donay, Jalen Guy, Armando Albert, Dale Thomas. I'm sure I'm missing some guys, Hayden Yost or Landon Russell, like somebody in that group of players. They're kind of pulling balls out of a bingo hopper for the lineup there at the back end. And they're going to have to find some guys, because that will be a differentiator when you stack them up against the other good lineups in the SEC, Tennessee, for example, A&M, for example. That could be a differentiator when you get into games against those types of lineups that don't quit. So it's a good call, Armstrong. That is something that we're going to have to monitor as the season goes on. Okay, Saturday game of the day. Today, on a busy day, we've got 9 games because of 2 doubleheaders. One where I'm at with South Carolina Vanderbilt, one in Athens with Alabama and Georgia. And that's one thing to watch out with the Alabama-Georgia doubleheader today. We saw how much Georgia struggled to slow down Kentucky last weekend. A doubleheader, which taxes your pitching even more. Alabama's offense has been really good. Georgia's just going to have to pitch a lot better than it did last weekend to keep Alabama off the board today, just given that they're going to have to cover 18 innings of baseball. So something to watch for there. My game of the day, though, is Mississippi State at A&M. That rubber game, huge, especially for both, frankly, but for State in terms of us understanding how good this team could be. Great pitching matchup again, Jurangelo St. against Justin Lampkin. Looking forward to that. Minor thing here, last weekend, St. walked 5 in 5 innings. that's something that he's can't afford to do against A&M, not just because it's a physical offense, but because that's what A&M does. Like they're going to sit there and they're going to foul off every two-strike pitch to make you be really, really fine with your pitches. And he walks enough guys that he struggles sometimes to be really, really fine. Now, his stuff is electric and he can get away with it sometimes, but he's not necessarily the pinpoint control guy yet or command guy that maybe he will be. But against this A&M offense, like that's, those narrow misses are not going to fly. They're going to make you throw quality strikes. So can he against that lineup? Because if he doesn't, it could be a long day or a short day, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But there is a scenario where this A&M lineup kind of wears him out and he's at, 95 pitches through 4 1/3. And that's going to be kind of all she wrote. So we'll see. But that is my game of the day, Mississippi State and Texas A&M in College Station. Some things to look for. Obviously, I'll have coverage of the doubleheader, South Carolina and Vanderbilt today. So I'll have that at the end of the day. D1 Digest, check that out. The great Mike Rooney covered our D1 Digest last night, and his D1 Digest versions are always a real treat because he just has fun with them. So kudos to Runes. So check that out. All kinds of other good content up on the website. Now, use code SECPlay24 if you're not subscribed. If you're watching this and you're not an SEC Extra subscriber, you can use the code SECPlay24 to get 24% off of an SEC Extra subscription. A couple things we've had go up recently on the site that I really like. Mark Etheridge wrote a piece recently. If you're kind of if you're a pitching nerd or just a baseball nerd in general, he's got a piece on the specific tactics Florida uses in managing Jack Caglione as a two-way guy and some of the challenges that come with that and what have you. He's got a piece on that. No one really kind of puts things like that in layman's terms quite like Mark. So that's just kind of a sample of some of the stuff we've had go up on the site recently that I think you'll enjoy. Again, SEC Play 24 for 24% off a subscription. And then finally, of course, Plains Coffee. Support the folks who are supporting us. If you're a coffee drinker, give them a try. Use code baseball at plainscoffee.com for 10% off, free shipping in the U.S. Your beans are not roasted until you order them. They will come to your doorstep as fresh as can possibly be, or order some tea if you're not into coffee. But regardless of what you order, use code baseball at plainscoffee.com for 10% off. That is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints. Enjoy a busy Saturday of SEC baseball, and I will talk to you guys again tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody.